Illuminate Works. So I am, Jennifer Fenton is my co-coordinator of these programs, and she's out on the road presenting legal reference, I believe. And so my name is Carolyn Peterson, and I am the Rural Library Consultant and the Tribal Library Consultant for the state of Washington. And so I am your host today, and I welcome you. Our technical producers, we have the option of having either Nan or Jeremy, and I noticed that Nan checked in with Jeremy a little earlier, and so Jeremy is going to be our technical producer today, and we thank him for all of his work. So I think we will just go ahead and get started, because what we're doing today is I wanted to have 3 people from very different situations talk about how they do their community reads. So what I have is we're going to go from the size of what should I say, smallest geographically to biggest geographically. And so it isn't that each of these programs are very good and very wonderful. So it isn't from little to small, but we're talking geographic size in terms of sort of impact. So this is, of course, a program that is brought to you through Institute of Museum and Library Services funds, and we want to acknowledge them. And of course, those funds are administered by the Washington State Library, in case you were unaware of that. So our first person up is Theresa Percy, and Theresa is director of the Port Townsend Library, and I came across her program when I was administrating a one-book grant, and I was very impressed with the variety and amount of programming her library produced. She has a wonderful staff, and she leads them to produce a wonderful program. And so with that, I'm going to let Theresa talk to you about the program that her library produces. So Theresa, I will hand the mic to you.
Good morning, everybody. This is a great opportunity because I like to think of myself as an evangelist for community read programs. So I'm going to go from A to Z in terms of our philosophy and our format for doing programs. Okay, now I have to do the first slide, so excuse me if I get a little, okay. Library community read programs, to the Port Townsend Library and to me, I think if a library does any kind of public programming, the community read program is probably the best one that you can do. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And when you look at a community read program, it really engages the whole community. And this is the one vehicle, I think, more than any other that does that. So in terms of definition, it's pretty simple. The entire community reads the same book. The benefits are to strengthen connection to the community. It really is an outreach effort. It's one way to think about reaching everybody. It's a catalyst for literacy and community interaction. And it really does transcend social and economic differences. And by this I mean it brings people together who might not normally interact or come together through the vehicle of discussion. We here in Port Townsend, actually, we have done 6 community reads, and thinking about this, seems like, you know, where did all the time go? And I'd like to just take a second just to go through them, just to give you a sense of the variety of topics that we have chosen. The first one was Counting Coup, about the Crow-In girls basketball team by Larry Colton. The next one we called 2 Books in a Movie, by Mark Sprague's book, Where Rivers Change Direction and An Unfinished Life. Once in a Promised Land by Layla Halaby, about Arab American, the Arab American situation, what it means to be an Arab in America. The Measure of a Mountain by Bruce Barcott, about Mount Rainier. The Hungry Ocean, about the female swordfish captain, Linda Greenlaw, who was the part of the Perfect Storm. She was the last one to have radio communication with the Andrea Gale. And this last year, the First Lover, about Emily Carr, the Artist by Susan Freeland. So that just kind of gives you a sense of the breadth of our selection. So as we look at thinking about a community read, how do we pick the books? How do we pick those 6 wide variety of topics? First, you need to know your community. and what fits into the community profile and interest. So for example, the Hungry Ocean, we were sort of targeting more the maritime and boat people in Port Townsend. We also look at a variety of, what we've done in the past genre. Have we done fiction? Have we done nonfiction? Male, female author, and various themes. Local, more regional. But I think the most important selection criteria is, can the author attend? To us here, we're not into doing famous books, but if the author is dead, forget it for us, because what we do in our process is we build up to the grand finale where everybody then wants to come and talk to the author after they've attended all the programs, have read the book, done the discussions. So it's very critical to us that we have a living author. And it's also okay if it's an old title, if it's not the most recent book that an author has written. That's okay with us. The main thing is to have the author come. Then you look at the cost. For us, we've been very fortunate. The very first one we did, Counting Coup, we had Friends of the Library funding. And then we got on the bandwagon of searching for outside funds, and so we've had a variety of funding sources. The IMLS funds was great. We had that for 2 or 3 years, and then Humanities Washington was another source, which, if you haven't thought about them, they love community read programs, and we've had 3 years of funding from them. This coming year, our next one, actually, we're going to go back to the Friends, because with Humanities Washington, they'll only fund a program for 3 years, and you can only go back 3 years, and then you need to take a break. The other thing that comes in when we sit around the campfire, thinking about, okay, what book are we going to take, select, is potential partnerships. Who can we bring in? Who can we involve in this community endeavor? And so we look at a book like, for example, The Hungry Ocean. The new Northwest Maritime Center had just opened, and so that was another reason in selecting that book, because it's not only a vehicle for the library, but it also is a vehicle for showing how the library connects into the community. And then the other issue is, okay, what types and variety of support programs and events? And I must tell you, with the Humanities Washington, this was one of the key elements that helped us get funding, because we just didn't do, everybody read the book and discuss it. We created this whole potpourri of programs, support programs, that was a vehicle for explaining or taking off on various themes of the book. And so for us, for example, let me just give a couple of examples. We were able to bring in, for example, with The Forest Lover, we involved the curator from the Emily Carr House, the professor on Northwest Indian art. So we were able to bring in sort of professional and experts in the field to enhance the various things in the book. But then we also like to have some sort of those grandstand, showy types of programs. With Mark Sprague, because he dealt with the West, we had a trail ride with horses. As a way to, everybody that rode a horse read the book, and then as we rode along the trail, we talked about the book. We had the best trail mix contest. With The Hungry Ocean was the best crab cakes. And with the very first one, with the Counting Coup, we had a exhibition basketball game between the Port Townsend girls basketball team and the Lower Elwha Indian girls team as well. So these were all platforms for ways to showcase the book and to stimulate discussion. I know a lot of places do. They have this whole very complicated selection criteria. You either vote.
May I have just a quick question?
I'm sorry.
How many people came to your horse ride? How many people came to your trail ride? Do you remember?
Yes, we had about 25.
Very nice. Okay, that
came
came across. Sorry, I didn't mean, but I thought if I didn't ask, we would remember. That was a great one. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we actually, at the end of the trail ride, we had a little raffle, and so we, I can't remember what we gave, but there was like a little prize at the end. Oh, I know what it was. I think it was a signed copy of the book. In fact, Mark Sprague, the author, if you've read his book, Growing Up by the National Forest, if he was able to come, we were going to have him ride a horse and be on the trail ride as well, but it just didn't work out. But as I was saying, the last point here is gut feeling. And I have to admit that, in Port Townsend, everybody has an opinion about something. And so I knew that we would never get consensus about the book. So for the first few years, essentially, I picked them. And, I asked staff or, we got suggestions. But then I kind of went with the gut feeling because, it has to be a book that has broad appeal, and you may think, or people will say, well, it has to be highly literacy or one of the classics. Well, that's okay, but if it doesn't have broad appeal with your community, and this goes back to you really have to know your community, it's not going to fly. And so actually, this is the first year that we had discussion about a couple of books for next year, and I went with, we actually had sort of a real staff input, more or less like a committee meeting. Okay, let me go to the next one. Okay. The other thing that we've done with our community read, and we've evolved over time, and basically this is because we've had some outside support, that it was important that we actually created a consistent traditional look for all of our materials. We were able to have a graphic designer initially do the work and create some really nice a program, discussion guide. We did bookmarks. We had buttons, I'm reading it buttons. So I think that's important because in a way, because we saw this as we do a lot of public programs here in Port Townsend, but we really wanted the community read to be our signature public program. So we created, posters, we had brochures that listed all the program, we had bookmarks, we had buttons. And then the important thing is you have to get them out in the community. They don't do any good sitting in your in a box in your office. So we utilized library volunteers, the teen advisory board, and we put the posters up. And the reason we did bookmarks is because a lot of places will put that on their counter. As people came in and checked out books, we stuck a bookmark in every book. And that's what we did with our discussion guides as well. One of the things we did in terms of our program is we give out about 70 to 80 free books to everybody as part of the community read, as part of launching it. And then we circulate some, and we ask people the free ones to read and pass along. Okay, key partners. Oh, wait, one more thing about selection criteria. It's important that the book is available, that you can get it in paperback and that it's, not a totally high-priced book. And it's great if it's available in large print or in an audio format as well, or ebook. So, as we think about the book, we think about the whole program, it's important to make your local press your best friend. Meet with them, inform them, do follow-up. Never assume that they're always going to be there. And so we've been fortunate with the local press here. They really give us a lot of excellent coverage. And then we work with the local bookstore who gets the books in and sells them at a discount to people. And so that helps too. We work with the schools. There's always been a school component when the author comes. The author does a presentation to the high school assembly. We work with the English teachers. And depending on the book, it depends what kind of format that takes, whether they read sections of the book or read the whole book. And then, as I mentioned before, about having special thematic programs that drives the partners, like the Northwest Maritime Center, the Jefferson County Historical Society. I mean, we've had a wide variety of local programs. So let me just go back over our format and process. We have, as I mentioned in selection, the book, really was a committee of one or more. Our partners, now you may think, okay, what's the role of a partner? What do we expect from them? Sometimes we only expect to use their name to stick it on our marketing thing. Other times they do an exchange, like the Historical Society will do an exhibit, or we'll get free meeting space, or like the schools, they don't charge us for their assembly. We give free copies. And our kickoff events. This goes back to what has evolved as our format, and our, let me just clear. Our kickoff events, we do the City Council proclaims March. We always do it the same time of year. March is Community Read Month. P.T. Schwartz does a dramatic, that's a group in town, the theater group. They do a dramatic reading all the time. We now have a juried art show at the Northwest Gallery. Part of our supplemental programs, we always have somebody that talks about the book in a literary criticism. You know, how does the author write? That's an important part. And the discussion groups, for us, it's important to have them in diverse locations around the community, different times, and it's a way to involve community leaders or just somebody that you want to get involved in the library. You know, ask them to be a discussion group leader.
May I intersperse here? One of the things I noticed you said was free books. How do you get those free books out? How do you decide where to get them out? Who do you distribute them to?
We give them out at the library, and they actually go very quickly because it's part of our announcement of the community read in the promotional materials, and so they come to the library and pick them up. And we have a special sticker on them that says, you know, read and pass them along.
Right. Thank you.
So expert in, okay, I already talked about that. We also have, in terms of our sort of usual, what has evolved over 6 years in terms of being part of our continual processes, we have a raffle. So the Mountaineer book, Measure of a Mountain, the Friends held a raffle for a weekend at Paradise Lodge. And so it was a way to raise a little money and also to get people involved. And as I mentioned, the finale was the bringing the author. And a couple of times we've had a music group sort of, for example, with the Measure of a Mountain, this local group sang all mountain songs. And so they sort of warmed up the audience. We always have a special introduction for the author. We involve the chair of our library advisory board. That's another opportunity to involve somebody that you want to keep, you want to cultivate for the library. And the other thing to remember, what we tell the author is, this is not an author reading. We don't want you to come and read from your book. Everybody has read the book. But they want the story behind the story. And that has been extremely successful. That's what, because people are ready. You know, that's why we announce it the month before. March is the Community Read Month. We announce at the beginning of February. People have the book. They have all of February to read. So they pretty much have, a lot of them have read them, not all of them. But when March starts, then they can come to the programs having read the book. Okay. Evaluation, you know, okay, how do you know it worked? Well, we have we hand out evaluations at all the discussion groups. We look at program attendance. We look at circulation of the title of the actual book. And it was very interesting this year with the community read, because not only did the Forest Lover books circulate, but all of the books that we had on Emily Carr and Northwest Coast Indian art. So we had a really kind of key indication that that it really didn't have an impact on the community in terms of interest in the topic. And then we work with the bookstore to say, well, okay, how many books did you sell? And he usually sells out. There's a how many buttons were distributed, and when you walk around town, you know, who do you see wearing a button? In the grocery store lines, you know, you'll see people wearing the button. And then there's this general buzz that gets excitement that gets generated within the community. People coming into the library saying how much they enjoyed it, or coming up to you on the street, or, you know, just sort of the folklore out there. And people asking, okay, what's next year's title? Oops, I'll go back. So, in terms of epilogue here, one of the biggest benefits, of course, is showcasing the library in the community. We're really being a catalyst out there. But also the library has made new friends with the authors. We have, you know, 6 authors now that we're friends with. We've brought new people into the library through this vehicle. Some books appeal to male, instead of just, you know, here in Port Townsend, the, you know, older woman audience. But like books like The Hungry Ocean, The Measure of a Mountain, some books lend themselves more to a mixed group. And at the end of the day, the library has spread the good word about itself. So, are there any questions, or did I go too fast, or did I forget something? Oh, I know, just one more thing. We do have the local cable TV film all of the events, and they're put on the cable thing, and now we also podcast them, and we're going to have the streaming video on our website, so if somebody missed a program, they can watch it, and the PTTV CD can circulate.
That's wonderful. Okay, great. Well, I think I caught the questions, but this is your opportunity to type any questions in, or if you have a headset, go ahead and ask. Click on your microphone down here at the bottom left-hand side, and do that. And it looks like Courtney is going to be up. Oh, I'm going to read Courtney's question. What's your overall budget, and where do you get your funding?
Okay, our overall budget, the first year we did it kind of on the cheap. But oh, and that's the other thing. If you could talk to the author directly, usually it depends on the author, you can get a discount. But it's between $5,000 and $6,000 because we've had funding. Our marketing materials is about $2,500. The authors like Susan Vreeland, we got a real discount with her, about $2,000 for the author, but then I've gotten authors for $300 or $400. So it really depends. My best success has been with if you can talk directly to an author, because they usually have a soft spot in their heart for public libraries. But that's where Humanities Washington funding came in, and the IMLS funding. It's worth having good marketing materials. It just is, because it creates that image out there, I feel. Oh, plus we put it all on our website. Oh, so no private funds. Yes, we did get money from Rotary one year and from First Federal, from the local bank, so we do go out and shop it around as well.
Any other questions? Okay.
Your microphone's turned off, Caroline.
I'm going to turn it over to our next presenter, and Courtney Shreve I also met when I was doing a one-book grant for the federal funds, and she does I was very intrigued with her because her program is one of the few that I'm aware that does a district-wide program for schools. So Courtney is the Community Relations Director for the North Thurston Public Schools, and her program covers the road from kindergarten through 12th grade and involves the community a great deal. And as such, I was very interested in having her talk about her program. And so Courtney, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Can you guys hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay. So Lacey Loves to Read, I'm going to go to the first slide, we'll have our 9th year coming up. And it started with the idea of what they were doing in Seattle with One City, One Book, similar to what you're doing in Port Townsend, it sounds like. But being a school district and the fact that the school district sort of came up with the idea or wanted to do something with reading in kids and the community, we looked at ways to have it be more about an author who had multiple books, because we didn't want to just market to high schoolers or preschoolers. The challenge comes in, as you all can expect, in finding the right author, somebody who has written multiple titles for different grade levels. So our first author we had was Gary Soto, who has written a variety of books. He's a Hispanic author. And then I believe we had Jane Yolen was next, and so on and so forth. And who else? We've had Walter Dean Myers, Naomi Shihab Nye, pretty unknown names to the mainstream community, but all the librarians, when we would announce every year who it was, they would get very excited because we tried to pick someone who would appeal to a multicultural aspect, but also have some awards. Usually the names that came up were always from the librarians. We would ask the school librarians and the public librarians who are some names. Obviously affordable. So it's an idea to do this community reading initiative similar to Port Townsend, except we kind of drill down to smaller kids too, looking for people who've written children's books, but maybe also something that's young adult or juvenile that grown-ups and or high school kids can relate to as well. And then we have them visit the community at the end of the year. Benefits to community and kids, similar to some of the other community read programs, getting families reading together and talking about the books that they're reading. I used to be the director of one of the reading foundations, South Sound Reading Foundation, and so my love of literacy sort of stems from that. And then I got into public relations for schools, and that kept going. But getting everybody to read together and providing them with titles and the excitement that, oh, this author's going to come to town. We're about a 40% poverty district, so some of our PTAs and schools can afford to bring authors to their schools and others can't. So having a free event at the end of the month where you've read the author and you and your mom and dad or grandma or caretaker, whoever's in charge of you, can come and hear the author at an event for free is a really big deal to a lot of these families. And over the years we've added door prizes and other incentives to get them out on a weeknight to come out and meet the author and get a book signed, etc. Community engagement is another benefit, encouraging reading awareness in general and participation throughout Lacey. We're sort of proud of our program because no other school districts or groups in the community have this, and so we often hear from librarians in Olympia and Tumwater, it's like, well, why aren't we doing this? And we're like, well, why aren't you doing it? Any school district could do it. It's just right now with the budget cuts, it's a matter of funding and building those private-public partnerships. But we've managed to keep it going. This has probably been our toughest year yet coming forth as far as budgets. We had the One Book grant. We had a Starbucks grant the first year, which was amazing. It was $15,000. Lately, we just haven't had the capacity or staffing to go out and write those grants and seek them out. And so that's kind of a challenge this year, as we're really trying to expand our committee to get more people who have more time to do those sorts of things. And then inspiring youth to meet a real live author, I sort of already talked about that. Sorry for the small type here. I was going to break this out, but I did not, so my apologies. But it's all there for you. Our funding is about $10,000 a year. We're probably going to cut that almost in half this coming year, and one of those issues, again, is the budget. We've lost some funding just because times are tight. The Friends of the Library have always come through for us through the public library. Some of our PTAs donate. We have a lot of partners. Our Sylvan Learning Center the local NTA Foundation, which is the teachers union basically. And then we have a lot of in-kind sponsorships from media that give us free airtime, and a printer who gives us a discount, a hotel that gives us a room for the author, and so on and so forth. So this year we're looking for someone local, and I'm happy to report, I think it's Richard Jesse Watson, if I get his name right. He's a local author from, I think, up your way, and we're just really happy to have someone we can afford that's also pretty well known and has some nice titles out there to share. In the past, we've had to fly people out from the East Coast and other places, and this year we just decided we can't afford to get that kind of author. The author selection is committee driven, but it usually comes down to availability. We found that a lot of these authors, especially the ones we want with children's authors, because a lot of them make their livings not on publications but on touring and speaking engagements, you have to book them almost a year in advance. So if you have your heart set on somebody, I would really look at that a year or two out and get them on the books and find out, like the previous panelist said, if you can get some discounts. We've had some people lower their fees a little bit. And publicity, we do bookmarks, banners. I'll talk about the bookmarks more because it's actually a contest for students. Posters, websites, flyers, and then we have a website which I'll show you in a little bit. Mostly it's word of mouth and the tradition that we've been doing this almost 10 years. We have monthly meetings with the committee, which consist of school librarians, the Lacey Chamber. We've gotten them on board in the last couple of years, which has been really beneficial for the door prizes and getting the posters out and the word out beyond the school and library community. The City of Lacey donates the space every year for us to have the big event. So a lot of public-private partnerships. And then for the author appearance, in the past few years we've really wanted to expand it beyond just a select group of kids. A lot of times when you have teachers pick students to come, they often pick the best and the brightest, and so we really wanted to open it up. So what we've been doing lately is having a rotating school basis. So we will have 4 school assemblies and rotate them every year so different schools get a chance to be the host school, and then we'll bus 30 some odd kids in from each of the surrounding neighborhood schools. So every school gets a chance to send some kids, but every year a certain school may get to host, which means they get more kids. So we have 4 school events, some type of VIP reception, used to be called the Educators Coffee. We've kind of combined that to have teachers and educators as well as the sponsors have a little one-on-one with the author. And last year we did a Skype workshop. I was very nervous about this. You guys here at the State Library have really impressed me with technology and ways that we could expand on technology to have more kids be able to see this author. But we did a Skype with Kirby Larson, and who's a great author. I highly encourage anybody to look at her. She's wonderful, really good with young audiences as well as adults. And it worked really well, but we had to plan it out in advance and test it. And but Skyping is a good way to get a good bang for your buck, and usually most authors are familiar enough with it that they don't mind doing it for a smaller fee. And I talked about our partners, so go to the next slide. And let me go back. At this point, I'm going to hopefully log on to our website because I have some more things I'd like to show you there. Are there any questions while I'm doing that?
Wow. Oh, good. It's up quickly. I was going to encourage you to type any questions. So if you have them, go ahead. But in the meantime, go ahead and give us a tour of your website.
Okay. One thing I want to track in the coming year, we switched over website providers this last year, so I need to look at the hits. I don't know how much traffic we get on the website, but it's something I'd like to expand upon. I'd like to take you to our bookmark contest because that's kind of a little side project. I was interested in the trail ride that Port Townsend does because one of the things we're trying to do is you do something like this for long enough, you can get in a little rut and just do the same things again and again. So we're really looking this year, how can we get out to an expanded market? this next author has a book about a rabbit, a magic rabbit, so we're going to get a magician to perform at the night event. One author was about animals and zoology, so it really does pay to think outside the box, try something a little different every year, but don't go over the top that you can't handle it. We've done that before, and it kind of fizzles because everybody loves this idea, but nobody sometimes steps up to take it on, so make sure you have enough staff support to handle the ideas you come up with. The Bookmark Contest is it's just really good. These kids here, you can see we have made it a point to have a school winner at every school. We have 21 schools, and we have a contest. We work through the librarians and the art teachers, and it's totally voluntary. And they have to draw. I'll show you some of the bookmarks up close in a minute. But after we have the contest, myself and a member of the city and sometimes the library will go around and walk into the kids' classes and surprise them. And it not only generates excitement about, oh, what is this Lacey loves to read? Oh, yes, that's coming up. I better read the book. But also recognizes kids who, quite honestly, they're really quiet. A lot of them are artists, and they've never been recognized in their life, and they get a little bag of goodies, as you can see. They get recognition from their school, and it's a pretty big deal. And then they get their bookmark published throughout the community. So we end up publishing about, I believe, 21 bookmarks, and then there's 6 grand prize winners, which you can see here. So I'll let you take a look at those. So I don't know if I do this, Jeremy, if I click a PDF, will it open up?
Typically, no.
Let's find out. If not, I'll close it out.
You can give it a try. I don't think it will work, but it might.
Can anybody, so you can't see that?
Could you, one of the things,
okay, it's up now, so nobody can see it. I'm going
to click here to view a PDF of the bookmarks.
Yes, you know what, I just did it, and it's not any different than what you're seeing on the screen, so we'll just look at those. I just wish it was bigger for you all.
Yes, I would like you to
Carolyn,
talk
you were
about
going to say something?
VIP dinner. I was pretty impressed when I went around for the one book. I don't think anyone had, that I had heard of or talked about, had as good a way of kind of thanking your partners, and you talked about some excitement that built around that. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that, what you did in terms of thank you for the people who really were good partners for you? Yes.
Well, sure. We invite them to the big event, which again is about 300 people. It's at our local community center. It's the last night of the 2-day of events we have with the author. Generally, it's at the end of February. Year before last with Cy Montgomery, we had a big VIP event, and by big I mean, you know, like a hotel conference room kind of thing, maybe 30, 40 people, where we invited librarians as well as the sponsors. It was catered. It was very well attended. It was sort of a private reading with the author. We didn't do that this last year mainly because of funding, and so we couldn't get a catered event. But we did have a smaller coffee event at one of the school libraries, and that was mostly librarians. It was after school. So I think we're going to try to revise the catered event. It's early evening, 5 to 7, and it's just a chance for the author and the sponsors to mingle and thank them for sponsoring us, and also for the librarians to meet and greet. And it's just a matter of getting that food donated or coming up with some money for the food, because food is always key with community events like that. Does that help, or do you want a little more information?
I think that's it. Theresa, you have a question about a donor event.
Yes, it just reminded me, one of the things that we've done when the author comes in, we have a welcome reception that we turned into a fundraiser. And this year with Susan Vreeland, we had a house party, invited some key potential donors, and Susan was there, so they had some private time with her, and it was very successful.
How did you raise the money?
That's
we
a
did
nice
the
idea.
pitch at the event.
Yeah, go ahead.
And Susan Vreeland talked about her experience with how the library sort of really helped her in her life when she was very sick. It was a very emotional presentation, and of course we had it you know, there was a lot of wine flowing, and of course you start telling that kind of a story, and then our fundraising committee spoke, I spoke, because we're in the middle of a major capital campaign for our library expansion, and then we did follow up with the people that were invited were selected, and we did follow up and ended up getting the pledge cards signed.
That's so one more way that you can use a community read, like, as Theresa points out, as a focus for many things. So, because it really does sort of amplify is not the word I want, but it embodies much of what the library is about. So, very good thing. All right. Any other questions for Courtney? Okay, well, there's more opportunities to do that, and then I think we will, can we click out of this, and we will go to Gwendolyn.
Sure, that's really quick. That's just to look at our sponsors and the different prices we ask them. So if you have more questions, I'd go check out the website, and maybe Jeremy can put it up there, or I can do that in just a second. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. All right. Well, the next person I would like to introduce is Gwendolyn Haley, and she is the Youth Services Manager with the Spokane County Library District, and she has worked on 2 consecutive NEA, which is National Endowment for the Arts, Big Read Grant projects in Spokane County, and not only that, but she lived to tell the tale. That is why I invited her, is because these are very complex. They're county-wide events, and there was much coordination and much preparation, and so I thought it was really important that we hear something that was, you know, many, many partners. And so, Gwendolyn, tell us about how you survived a big
Thank you, Carolyn. Great. Well, can everyone hear me all right? Okay, great. Well, I am, as Carolyn said, I'm the Youth Services Manager in Spokane County Library District, and we have done 2 big reads as a library system at this point, and I'm calling this Bigger and Better Together. Just to give you some background, Spokane County has about 425,000 people altogether. That includes the city of Spokane and then all the communities in the surrounding county. And so we partnered in 2008 with the Spokane Public Library, which is the city library system, and also with the library at Fairchild Air Force Base to do a big read of the Maltese Falcon. And one of the reasons we chose to do a big read is because it allowed us to do a classic novel that we wouldn't do normally. We have another program every fall in October and have for several years called Spokane is Reading, where we do a traditional one book, one community event and bring in the author. And of course, that's not an option with the Maltese Falcon, and so we wanted to do this. And this slide here is just a little piece of some of the publicity we did. And the grant project for the big read is a huge grant project, and we had about $15,000 in grant money, and then also matching funds from our friends groups, and then just in-kind contributions from all the staff time that went into it. And one of the reasons we liked having all that grant money coming our way was because we were able to purchase books to give away in our community. And we purchased hundreds and hundreds of books to give away. We gave every school in our community, every high school got one classroom set, which is a lot of books. And that's a great way to get the high schools to participate, is when you can give them books. And then we gave them out at in our libraries, we gave them out at coffee shops, we gave books out everywhere we could think of. And it was really, really fantastic, and there was no way we could do that without the big read money. And then in 2010 we did To Kill a Mockingbird. And the reason we chose To Kill a Mockingbird was because we get asked almost annually up to this point if we could do that as a Spokane is Reading event. And of course, those of you who know, Harper Lee is kind of a recluse and doesn't travel to do community read programs, and so that was not going to be one for Spokane is Reading, but it was great and another way to tie in with the high schools. And we really, really try to, for the big read events, we really wanted to connect with the schools in our area. But again, when you've got 2 library systems plus a base and plus other community partners, it's a bit like wrangling cats as you try to go through and get all of this together. And that's what I'm going to spend most of my time talking about. I think both Courtney and Theresa talked about a lot of the great event ideas that they had. But when it comes down to it, there's really good reasons to collaborate, and in our case, we were able to reach a larger audience. Spokane County Library District has 10 branches, and the city library has 6. We share a community, but again, Fairchild Air Force Base tends to be a more insular community, and by partnering with them, we're able to do some things on the base that we normally wouldn't do. We don't always see the servicemen and women off base. So that was great. Also really connecting in a concerted way with the high schools, which we haven't been able to do. And then just sharing resource and expertise across multiple organizations was really a fantastic way to leverage the grant money and to reach the largest possible audience. When it comes down to choosing community partners for an event like this, there's some things you need to look for. And of course, when you have a youth services manager doing a presentation, all the pictures are going to be of children. That's just a given. But look for shared vision, mission, and values. And when you're partnering with another library, that's easy because we do. And shared community, of course, and geography. And in the case of Spokane County Library and Spokane Public Library, we share names, so no one actually knows the difference between our 2 library systems. The only people who really recognize the difference are the people who actually work for those individual library systems. Everyone else, their library is their library, and they don't register whether it's within the city limits or outside. And not even our local press actually recognizes that there is a difference. And so partnering together just makes sure that everybody can be on the same page, and we all can work together in that way. And the other thing that we found as we went through 2 of these big projects is that the individual people who you're working with matter so very much. We had a group of people from the library systems, the librarian from the base, Susan Creed from Spokane Public Library, who were very passionate about this project. And so when we all came together to sit down at the table, there was a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of excitement about it, which turned into a lot of actions taken. And so that's really important, because you can grab an organization and say, well, we should work together, but if they're not passionate and the individual people sitting at the table planning with you don't have that enthusiasm, it's going to fizzle. The second thing is to have people who have the power to do things that you need done. We need people who can leverage either through their position or their persuasiveness actions to come out of that, because again, you could have people sitting at a table who have great ideas but really don't have any way to have those happen. And again, when you're working with multiple organizations, you really need the movers and the shakers to be sitting at that table and working with you. And we had a group of people who were really task-oriented, so we were able to meet every month and have checklists and go through, and everything got done, and they had a lot of purpose. And we learned in our first big read, and so we changed this but when we did the second one in 2010, you have to have your publicity people sitting at the table at the very beginning, because each library system actually has their own publicity and community relations departments, and we needed to have them in the very beginning planning stages, because otherwise it got very confusing who was doing what, and all of that publicity has to be coordinated across the county. And so the individuals that are sitting at the table in the planning stages really matter. And then because the Big Read is such a big project, we actually wrote the grant the year before the events. It's a year-long grant cycle, so we wrote the grant in February, and then we received notice that we'd gotten the grant in the summer, and then we did all of the events the following February. So we had a huge amount of time on the one hand, but we found that almost wasn't enough time, just because by the time you're coordinating with the schools, we had to talk to them early before they took their summer break and then come back in the fall and actually get their commitment to do the things that they'd agreed to do. Having clear assignments and responsibilities, because we all had multiple things that we were juggling. We had assignments, connecting with potential programs and performers and all of that, and so we had to make sure we were checking in frequently. And of course, none of us shared an email system, and so coordinating meetings and all of that was very complicated across organizations, because at one point we had people from the local college, from Gonzaga University, Spokane Public Library, Fairchild Air Force Base, the Museum of Art and Culture here in Spokane, and then my library system. So of course, we don't, since none of us share an email, we had to find different ways to coordinate. And using those great online collaborative tools like Google and things like that was really nice to have one calendar where we could all just add to and things like that. It was really helpful. If you haven't used any of those resources, I recommend Google Documents and things like that, so you can collaborate outside of your individual system. And then backup plans, because things fall through. We had a plan for a film contest and we didn't get any entries, and so we had a whole event planned around that, but of course when there's no entries you can't show the winning film. And then, so things go wrong, and with all that time you'd think you'd have enough backup plans in place. So let me just run down some of the events that we did. In addition to giving away all of the books, which was really the most important piece of the Big Read Grant, we coordinated with Gonzaga University and had Readers Theater. We had a big kickoff event each time. It's a requirement of the grant. For the Maltese Falcon, we went down to the Davenport Hotel here in Spokane and had a gala kickoff event. With To Kill a Mockingbird, we brought in Mary Badham, who played Scout in the movie. Both of these novels had great film versions available that we were able to show. So we did that. We coordinated with, I think I mentioned the Readers Theater. We actually went to one of the local taverns that has a trivia night and took it over and had a film noir trivia night for the Maltese Falcon, which was a lot of fun and a different audience than we normally would see for a community read. And then with To Kill a Mockingbird, we actually worked with our local rifle club and sponsored a sharpshooting contest, which they ran and provided the equipment and the space for. Just another different option. But with all these moving pieces, all that coordination becomes really important as we try to work together. Does anyone have any questions for me about specifics?
One of the things that I'd like to just add in while people might be typing is that I'd like you to watch WSL updates for free books, because what's happening now is that the libraries in the state are gradually realizing that we can share each other's books. And for example, I just got Everett emailed me, and I'm going to put out on WSL updates that I have 329 good trade copies of The Hotel at the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. And it's basically first come, first serve, and I don't put a limit on it. I will give 40 copies to, I put a minimum of, I won't send it out any fewer than 10. But if somebody contacts me and says, I want 100 copies, give them to me, I will. In fact, I did that, I believe, for the Spokane County. They just asked for, I can't remember what the Eastern Washington University asked me for a bunch of copies of, I think, and I sent them 100 copies of the book. So that's something that I think you can do. And I notice now that Tim has typed something, and he says, what was the breakdown of participants between children, youth, and adults?
Sure. Okay. Well, and Tim, that's an excellent question, and it depended on the program. I think, like for our sharpshooting contest, it was about 50-50 youth and adults. For the evening events, a lot of the book discussions, things like that, skewed adult. We had one book discussion at Atticus Coffee Shop here in town that was about 20 homeschool teens that came to read the book. So with the To Kill a Mockingbird, also we had almost every high school in our community participated. So, and then it was read over the airwaves for a month on our local KPBX public radio affiliate as part of their bookshelf program, which was fantastic. So, it's hard to give you real exact numbers, but it was a pretty even spread of teens and adults for that particular book, which was really great and part of our goal. And then I see Courtney's asking, does it have to be a public library or can a school librarian request?
And I think, is she talking, do you think about my books? So that I just talked about? Yes, Courtney says yes. And I send them out to schools. The only caveat is they will only send them out to people within the state of Washington. And I've sent them out to hospital libraries, prison libraries, school libraries, community college libraries. I haven't ever had a four-year college ask me, to my knowledge, but it's basically you have to be a library within the state of Washington. Any other questions? One other thing, could you just make a little bit clearer? So how long does the big read actually take if you do it through? Is it like an 18-month process, or is it so you have to start a year ahead of when you actually want the event to occur to allow, and then how long?
Sure. The grant cycle is like a September through May for the activities. So we were applying for a grant. The grant deadline was in February, and then your events needed to take place between the following September through May. So we planned, because we had about a year, but people sometimes apply in February and do all their events in the fall, or they take even longer. But given that we have other community events going on and we needed that much time to plan for it. I'm trying to think. It's a month-long slate of programs that you are committed to do for the big read. So at least 30 days of programming. So we had 30 days of...
Does that mean 30 programs or just...
No, 30, just over a period of 30 days. And so we probably had a couple programs happening every week for a 4-week period, including it being read over the air was one of our activities, book discussions. I think we had 10+ book discussions throughout our community. We took book discussions into community centers, senior centers, retirement and assisted living facilities. We had all of the high schools committed to reading it, which was a big win for us. And we were also able to take Mary Badham around to 2 of the high schools. And one of the other things we found when coordinating with high schools in our area is when you can give them something for free, like books or a program, that's a huge incentive for them to participate. And part of the reason we gave ourselves a year to plan and do all of this is because we really, really wanted to make sure we made that connection with high schools. And that takes time because the teachers have their curriculum and they're already planning. And if you're planning, yeah, and see Tim was approving it and got it approved in May and then presented in October. And that's a very short turnaround time frame, Tim. Wow, I'm impressed. I don't think we could pull that off.
That's why Tim has as much gray hair as he does.
But for us too, we needed to have the time to really connect with teachers in the schools because we end up talking with them in the spring, and then there's a summer break, and then they come back in the fall, and in the meantime, teachers have changed what grades they're teaching, so maybe they committed to teach the novel, but now they're not teaching the freshman or sophomore English class. Now they're teaching the seniors, and it's not on their curriculum, and so that makes a big difference for us too. And all of that kind of going back and replanning and redoing some things as a result. It's just one of the challenges of partnering with our schools. It's worth it.
Absolutely, I think so, but I do think, especially now with all the cutbacks in school librarians. Yes, Courtney's you said one challenge we found is the cuts to school librarians. It is, we're finding it very difficult, but I think if you're patient and just keep coming back to the schools, and when you do a grant or when you do a contract, if you can ask them and Courtney, maybe you could speak to this a little bit, but we usually ask for the principals to get involved as well, and that gives us a better buy-in. What would you advise, Courtney?
I would, if you're dealing with specifically high schools. I mean, we're trying to go across the board, and when we go to them, the natural tendency is for the principal to say, oh, we'll talk to our school librarian. She or he can help you coordinate. But they're exhausted. Our librarians now at elementary are working 2 schools. So I think also talking with someone like myself, the community relations director at the school district, and say, hey, we'd really like to launch this. What's the best way to go about it? And I was just kind of making that as an editorial comment. That's one thing we found is we used to have more enthusiasm and time and support from the school librarians, and understandably we don't have that anymore. But principals, you know, that's a good place to start too.
Yeah, and we found too that sometimes finding the one English teacher or any one of the teachers, if you happen to know someone who's really excited about the project, sometimes they're the person who's the best communicator, because as Courtney said, the school librarians sometimes are either really overtaxed or they're just simply not there anymore. And we found that we had a couple of English teachers that when we connected with them, they were very excited and grabbed it and ran with it. And you know, either they're the department head or they're just somebody who's so excited and enthusiastic and persuasive that they get the whole school on board. And that makes a huge difference. Sometimes the individual person that's your gatekeeper into that school is not necessarily the one who's got the title, but rather the passion and the excitement.
All right. Well, thank you. I wanted to, so ready to take the leap. That's a wonderful ending slide. Do you have any other comments? Well, I'm going to say thank you, everyone. We are going to, we have one more slide. Jeremy, would you put that up? Again, I have mentioned this. Would you please type in chat now your name and the name of your library, and also if there is more than one person at your listening, because sometimes we have people, you know, there's speakers on and we would do that. And we will put this up again. You know, do let people know about it who are planning community reads. I think you heard an excellent overview of the process from 3 very different sources, and I want to say thank you very much to our participants. Thank you for the time you took to put it up. This is going to be a wonderful resource to have on our webs, and you know, it'll stay up there. We leave it up as a resource for a very long time, and people do find it every year and every month. So thank you once again. And once you have done that, next month we have a program that we believe we are going to be talking about open source software evergreen. We believe that is what is going to happen. So we're not positive about that yet, but that is what we anticipate doing for next month. So stay tuned and watch your first Tuesday's listserv. And again, thank you, a hearty thank you to everyone who participated, and we hope to see you next week. Thank you very much.